Hi everyone, it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome to this week's Sketch Sunday. So that was the sketch. It's from My Favorite Things. You can head over to their blog and find the sketch and all the information over there. So we're inking up the background of this stamp. It's a My Favorite Things stamp. I believe it's called All Over Roses. We're going to use some Versamark ink to ink up that stamp and do it on the background. The card is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card, and I'm using the Versamark watermark ink to ink up the stamp, and it's right underneath the fold in the top of the card. I'm using my Misty stamping tool without the black pad in it, and I'm stamping it several times so that I make sure that I get a really good stamped impression so that all of the black embossing powder will stick to it. I will be using Martha Stewart ebony embossing powder that you can see there right now that I'm shaking onto the card background. I'm using a scrap piece of paper to catch all of the extra, and I will dump it on, I believe, twice and then flick off the excess so that the whole entire background is covered. Now, if you'll notice, once I start heat embossing it, not everything will be covered in the black, but don't worry, we will cover that up with other things. So I'm using the Martha Stewart heating gun, and it's old. It's probably 5 or 6 years old. I got it at Michael's and they don't carry Martha Stewart products anymore. So all I'm doing is waving the heat embossing gun over the different parts of the background so that it heats up. When it gets shiny, you'll know that it's all heated up and ready to go. So now we're going to put that off to the side while we work on another part of our project. So we're going to be using the stamp set Time for Bubbly from My Favorite Things. We're going to be using the one stamp from there. And then we're going to be using some of the dyes. We're going to be using alcohol markers. We're going to be using some Copic hashtag coloring markers from Michael's. We're going to be using some Pro markers and some Premier by Nicole markers. So there I am. I'm just putting the black pad back into the Misty stamping tool because we're going to be using the clear stamps and you need that extra padding in there. So I put the stamp where I want it, and we're inking up with some My Favorite Things black licorice hybrid ink. This ink is good for using alcohol markers. Another one is Memento. Those are the two that I found that do the best. So here we go. We are just stamping the image down. We're going to stamp it several times because I don't get a clean impression the first time. This stamp, for some reason, doesn't stamp that well the first couple times, so I usually have to stamp it 3 or 4 times, and I'm just going back and applying a little bit more pressure into the areas that did not stamp nicely the first or second time. So I'm going to move the magnets a little bit because I thought maybe they were getting in the way. Part of the stamped image that wasn't stamping properly was right near the magnets. So I decided to move them and see if that would give me a little bit better results. I love using the Misty because I find that it makes it so much easier. My stamping is so much better because you can continually ink up the stamp and re-stamp the image over and over again without trying to worry about if you're getting it in the right place or not. The Misty is one of my must-have tools for my craft room. So I'm pressing it down again in the areas that were not stamping so well, and I think this is the last time. I think that I came out with a pretty decent image. So there you go. There's the image. So we are going to heat set it really quickly with the Martha Stewart heat gun just to zap it a little bit. Usually I let the ink dry for about 20-25 minutes before I go ahead and color, but since this is a video, I wanted to speed it up and that would help a little bit. So now we are going to use 3 different colors of Distress ink to ink up the background: Picked Raspberry, Worn Lipstick, and Spun Sugar. So the first one that I put on was a really, really light pink. So now if you've never used Distress inks before, you want to start off the paper, and this is a non-stick craft mat that I'm using, the brown paper that's underneath of it. It's fantastic for doing your doing any images that you get inky with. It's very easy to clean up. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the Spun Sugar over the background, and it's the lightest color, so I'm using the heaviest hand with that. And then I'm going to take the blending tools and put the other 2 colors on and just kind of mix and match them. Doesn't really matter where they go, they blend so easily together. The reason that we heat embossed it was so that the Distress ink would actually bead up on the black parts. It doesn't actually go over the lines. So those black lines stay really, really nice and crisp no matter how much ink you put on top of it. So you'll notice that my hands get a little bit inky because like I said, it sits on top of the paper. So you'll see me show my hand in a minute. And you can see that my fingers are really, really pink because of this. I was actually wiping the ink off of the black parts. So ink blending tools are very, very easy to use. Like I said, there you go. You can go direct to paper. That spun sugar is so, so light. So I kind of went direct to paper just to give it a little bit more color. It was a little bit easier to do that. And then I'll go back in with the other two colors and blend it out, and my front piece is done. So as you can see, there's a couple white spots where the black didn't emboss so well, but don't worry about that. We will cover those up with the main image. So there's the front of the card, and we're going to put that to the side. And now we're going to work on the image itself. So it's dried, but I probably would have given it a little bit more time. I probably should have hit it with the heat gun again. So now I'm going in with some Copic markers. Now these are Chow markers that I got from Hobby Lobby. You can use the coupon with them at Hobby Lobby. The color that I'm using right now is E11, and these come in a set of 3. I believe these were the skin tone colors: E11, E000, and E00. I think there was actually a 4th one in there. These might come in a set of 4. I'm not sure if these were 3 or 4s, but they are fantastic. If you're just starting out with Copic markers, I would suggest that you try the ones that have like a color family, not the ones that are just all like the primary colors: red, blue, green, yellow. Those ones you can't really blend with anything else unless you have other markers. So I would recommend these, and check in the scrapbooking section as well as over in the art marker section, because they have different ones. Hobby Lobby has the Chow ones over in the scrapbook section and the sketch ones in the other section, in the artist section. So what I'm doing now is I'm using a Premier by Nicole marker. It is, I think it's slate. Yes, it's slate, and then I was going over the darkest parts with that, like right underneath the rim of the tub. And then I'm using the Pro marker in Ice Gray 1 to go back and do some shading around the tub. And I think that if you leave a white image white, it doesn't really stand out, so I kind of just went around the edges. And then I took my blending pen, my blender pen, and went over the middle of it so that it kind of gives it a little bit of shadow around the edges. You can see I did a wood floor on the other piece, my trial piece, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I do end up doing that. And then we're using hashtag coloring markers, and those are R3 and R17, and I'm just coloring in the whole entire thing. And I use the nib end and the brush tip end of those 2 markers just to color in the rug. Then we're using the R14 and the R17 to color in the outside of the, this is to color in the wine, and then I will do the outer ring of the rug in the red as well. I believe I used R17 for the outer ring of the rug. For the bubbles, I'm using the hashtag coloring marker, which I got at Michael's, and it's B2. So now I'm going back in with the gray markers, the slate and the Ice Gray 1, to go back in and color the foot of the clawfoot tub that I forgot, and to color in the top of the wine glass. And then I think I even go back in and color a little bit of the stem. I forgot to color her hand, so I'm going back in with that. I was not very detail oriented this time when I was coloring in the image. So just going back and forth between the different kinds of alcohol markers that I have to finish coloring in the image. So there you see I'm taking the chisel end of one of the reds and coloring the edges of the rug. So then I decided to go back in, and I wanted to do the wood floor like I had done before. So those are Copic markers, and they are E15 and E18. I also used a V5 black Pilot pen to draw the lines, and I also used the T ruler that I got from Michael's to draw the wood panels onto the image. Now, my image was not stamped on straight, so I couldn't really use the T-ruler like it was intended to be used. So I kind of just had to eyeball it. Again, I'm not perfect with lining things up, but I just wanted some nice straight lines. And I go back and I draw the planks for the wood into the floor. So fairly easy to do, just a couple of straight lines that you use the ruler with. And I think that it gives it a little bit more dimension. It gives a little bit more realism to your scene when you add details like that. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with then I was shading underneath the rug. I figured that that would be the darkest area, would cast some shadows. Again, I am not a good color with Copic markers. I'm not very familiar with them. These are relatively new within the past 2 months to me. So this is something that I'm constantly practicing on and trying out different techniques. So if you guys have any tips, feel free to leave them below in the comment section, because I would love any coloring tips. I have not taken an art class since middle school, so it's been quite a while. So I'm just kind of doing what I think looks right. Just going back and adding some highlights in there, and then I decide that I want to cut the image out, as well as some of the banner pieces that I'm going to use for the back of the card. What I didn't realize was that I didn't line it up very well, and you will see what happens in the end. So even though I have the magnetic platform, I usually still use some washi tape to tape the images down if it's going to cut off an image. If I've already spent all that time coloring, I want to make sure it cuts out perfectly, which obviously I did not do, and you'll see that in a minute. So those two banner pieces, one is from Simon Says Stamp, excuse me, and the other one is from My Favorite Things. It's one of the blueprint tags, I believe. So if you notice, there's a little bit of too much of a white border on the top of it, so we'll fix that in a minute. And I'm taking out the images. Now you want to keep that white piece there, and I'll show you how to stamp in a couple minutes. So I was looking and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because it looked really, really plain. So I have an old Zig 2-way glue pen that you can see that the tip is white, and that's perfect for creating a mask, and that's exactly what I wanted to do, so that I could use a My Favorite Things fleur-de-lis background stamp that you see there to kind of do a wallpaper pattern. Again, I forgot to take the black piece out because it is a red rubber cling stamp. So I'm just using Razzleberry ink by My Favorite Things and stamping a couple times to create the wallpaper texture on the background. Now it's going to get on the mirror, but don't worry about that, because we're going to do something different with that. There's a mirror piece that we're going to cut out in a minute, and then we're also going to use some glossy accents and some, excuse me, and some glitter to cover up those pieces that got on the mirror. So then I peeled the mask off of that so that you can see what it looked like. And now I'm just cutting around the edges so that there is no white border around the whole entire piece. So we're just going to put it on there like that. So now I'm breaking apart the die that goes with the mirror, and I'm going to get some white cardstock so that we can cut that out. It didn't fit on the scrap that I had, so I went and I did more. So now I'm going to show you how to stamp the banner. So you take that scrap piece of paper, you put the sentiment in there, line it up exactly how you want it to be, open the door, and then put the piece back in where it belongs and stamp it. So I use that same My Favorite Things Razzleberry ink to stamp the image and the sentiment in twice, and it says, "Relax and enjoy." So now I'm just piecing it together kind of like how I want it to be, and I'm going and I'm showing you how you can make a small banner piece, make it look larger. So I'm cutting it down into 2 pieces, and we're just going to glue it behind the main image so that it looks like the banner is actually sticking out, looks going the whole way, but it's only going to be little pieces on the ends. So we're going to use the blue Zig 2-way pen, my new one, and attach the front and the back pieces. I'm going to cut down that last piece in a minute when I realize that I don't like the way that it looks on the card. I actually want it to just be a straight edge rather than a point. It looks like an arrow. So there we go, we're lining it up, and I'm just cutting that tip off of there. So I'll use my Zig 2-way glue pen to glue the back of it down. Oh, actually, I'm using my mini Misty tool to go around the edges with, and I believe it was either worn lipstick, it was pink raspberry, I believe, that I went around the edges of all the white pieces in so that it just stood out just a little bit. Now, I don't want to use the Zig 2A glue pen. I want to use these dots. These dots are from Michael's, from the dollar bin, and don't throw them away when they're done. You can use the excess pieces to just like pop dots. So you get so much out of the dollar or $1.50 that they are. So I think that it just popped up. It looks really nice, so it's not sitting right on top of everything. It just gives it a little bit of dimension, and I think it looks really good. So there's the piece, and then we are going to glue the mirror on, and then I'm going to get the glossy accents and the glitter, and there you go. There is the finished image of the card. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to doing Sketch Sundays every week. I hope that you really like this. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below. Go over and check my Instagram out at scrapsecrets1120, and I will see you guys again next week for another Sketch Sunday. Thanks. Bye. Sorry for the very long video. Hope you guys like this, and I will see you again next Sunday for another Sketch Sunday. Bye!